Tommy sat in the back of the school library, his eyes glued to the computer screen in front of him, his heart racing with every keystroke. He had been working on his paper for weeks, and he knew this was his chance to impress her. Miss Mary, the young, beautiful, and enigmatic English teacher who had captured his heart from the moment she had stepped into the classroom. Her fiery red hair fell in soft waves around her porcelain face, framing the greenest eyes he had ever seen. Her voice, a melodic blend of strength and kindness, was the soundtrack to his every waking moment. He had fallen for her, and fallen hard. It was a secret he had kept buried deep within himself, fearing the repercussions of his taboo desires. But now, in the quiet solitude of the library, with the scent of aged books and the distant murmur of students studying, he allowed himself to dream. Mary walked in, her heels clicking rhythmically against the cold linoleum floor. The sound echoed through the vast, silent room, and every head snapped up to look at her. Tommy felt his cheeks flush and his palms sweat as she approached the desk. She wore a tight black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, and a crimson cardigan that matched her hair. "Good evening, Tommy," she said, her voice a soft caress that sent a shiver down his spine. "How's your paper coming along?" It's fine," he stammered, his eyes unable to meet hers. "Just fine. Just fine," she repeated, raising a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "You know you can do better than just fine. I expect greatness from my students, especially from someone as bright as you." Her words stung, but they also fueled the fire burning inside him. He wanted to be great for her, to make her proud, to show her that he was more than just a teenage boy with a schoolboy crush. He nodded, swallowed hard, and went back to typing. What happened next was a blur of awkward glances and stilted conversation. Tommy couldn't focus on his paper. He could only focus on her. The way she moved with an elegant grace, the way she leaned over slightly when she talked, the way her eyes seemed to pierce through his very soul. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of hormones and emotions he didn't know how to navigate. As the hours passed, the library grew quieter. One by one, the students packed up their things and left, until it was just the two of them. Tommy pretended not to notice when she began to close up the library, his eyes never leaving the screen. He knew he should leave, but he couldn't bring himself to move. "Not yet." "Tommy," she said, her voice taking on a concerned tone. "It's late. Don't you think you should go home?" He nodded, saved his work, and began to gather his things. As he stood to leave, he found himself looking into her eyes. They were so close, just a breath apart. The air between them felt electric, charged with a tension that was palpable. "Miss Mary," he said, his voice shaking, Can I talk to you about something?" Her expression softened, and she nodded. "Of course, Tommy. What's on your mind?" The words tumbled out of his mouth before he could stop them. "I think I'm in love with you." The room grew still. The world around them seemed to fade away as the weight of his confession hung in the air. Tommy watched as the color drained from Mary's face, her eyes widening in shock. He had never felt more vulnerable, more exposed. "What did you just say?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, taking a step back. "I didn't mean to." "No," she said, her hand shooting out to grab his arm. "You can't just say something like that and take it back." Tommy felt a spark of hope ignite within him, even as the reality of the situation crashed down. "I'm not taking it back," he said. "I know it's wrong. I know you're my teacher, but I can't help how I feel," he finished, his voice a mix of determination and desperation. Mary's grip on his arm tightened, and for a brief moment she searched his eyes, looking for something. Understanding, perhaps, or maybe just a reason to believe his words weren't a cruel joke. "Tommy," she began, her voice trembling, "you're my student. This isn't appropriate." "I know," he said, his voice cracking. But I had to tell you, I can't keep it in anymore. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and she let go of his arm. I appreciate your honesty, she said slowly, but we need to maintain professional boundaries. I understand, he murmured, feeling the weight of her rejection. His heart sank like a stone in his chest, but he knew she was right. Mary took a deep breath, visibly composing herself. Your paper, she said, changing the subject. It's due tomorrow, yes? Yes, he said, the words sticking in his throat. Then you should go home and finish it. I'm sure it'll be brilliant. She offered him a forced smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Tommy nodded, unable to speak. He turned to leave, feeling more alone than he ever had before. As he exited the library, he heard the soft click of the lock behind him, sealing his confession within the four walls that had momentarily held his hope. The night air was cold and unforgiving as he stepped outside. The stars above twinkled indifferently, and the streetlights cast long shadows that danced around him as he walked home. He felt like a fool for thinking she might reciprocate his feelings, for thinking that a woman like her would ever look at someone like him with anything but pity. The next day, he handed in his paper with trembling hands. It was his magnum opus, a declaration of love wrapped in Shakespearean sonnets and poetic metaphors. He knew it was his best work, but it felt hollow without her knowing the truth behind it. Days turned into weeks, and the awkwardness between them grew thicker than the dust on the library shelves. They danced around each other, never quite making eye contact, never speaking more than necessary. Tommy's heart ached every time he saw her, a constant reminder of what could never be. One evening, after class, she called him over. He approached her desk with trepidation, his heart racing once again. Tommy, she said, her voice soft but firm. I need to talk to you. He swallowed hard, his palms slick with sweat. Okay, he managed to croak out. I read your paper, she began, her eyes scanning the room to ensure they were still alone. It's beautiful. Incredibly mature and insightful for someone your age. His heart skipped a beat. Thank you, he murmured, unsure of where this was heading. But, she continued, her gaze drifting down to the desk, I couldn't help but notice the undertones. The way you described your subject, the emotions you conveyed, it was all very intense. The silence grew heavy, suffocating. Tommy felt his cheeks burning, his chest tightening. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Mary took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his again. You didn't make me uncomfortable, Tommy. Surprised, yes, but not uncomfortable. He searched her eyes, looking for any hint of what she was feeling, any sign that she might feel the same. But all he saw was a sadness, a weariness, that made him want to take back every word he had ever said. I can't, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You know I can't. He nodded, understanding dawning on him like a cold, harsh light. I know, he said. It's just that. I had to tell you. I couldn't keep it in anymore. And I appreciate that, she said, her voice gentle. But we can't do this. You're my student, and I'm your teacher. It's wrong. I know, he repeated, the words feeling like a knife to the heart. But can we? Can we still be friends? For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she nodded. We can still be friends, Tommy. But we need to keep things strictly professional from now on. Okay? He nodded again, the ache in his chest spreading like a wildfire. Okay. The rest of the school year passed in a blur of painful longing and forced smiles. Tommy threw himself into his schoolwork, hoping to impress her from a distance, to show her that he was more than just a crush, that he had depth, that he was worthy of her love. But it was no use. She remained the untouchable goddess on her pedestal, forever out of reach. He watched her from afar, her beauty taunting him, her every gesture a silent rejection of the love he felt. One day, as the school year drew to a close, She called him into her office. His heart hammered in his chest, his palms slick with sweat. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew it couldn't be good. "Tommy," she said, her voice serious, "I need to talk to you about your behavior." He looked at her confused. "My behavior?" "Your infatuation with me," she clarified. "It's become disruptive." He felt the color drain from his face. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I didn't mean for it to be." "I know you didn't," she interrupted. "But it's important that you understand the seriousness of the situation. It's not appropriate, and it can't continue." "I know," he said, his voice small. "I'll try harder." "It's not just about trying harder," she said, her eyes searching his. "It's about moving on. You're a bright, talented young man. You have so much to offer the world. Don't waste your time pining for something that can never be." Her words were like a slap in the face. He felt the sting of them, the truth burning through the layers of his denial. He nodded, unable to speak. "Good," she said, her expression softening. "Now go home, get some rest. And when you come back to school tomorrow, let's start fresh, okay?" He nodded as he left her office. The finality of her words echoed in his ears. He knew she was right. He couldn't go on this way. But the thought of letting her go was unbearable. The summer stretched ahead of him, a vast, empty expanse of time that seemed to mock him with the promise of change that never came. He tried to focus on his friends, his hobbies, his future, but she was always there, lurking in the back of his mind. The first day of the new school year brought a mix of dread and hope. He walked into class, his heart in his throat, only to find her absent. The rumors spread like wildfire. She had taken a leave of absence, some said. Others whispered that she had moved away, unable to face the scandal his confession had almost caused. Tommy was torn between relief and despair. He knew that seeing her every day would have been torture, but now she was gone, and with her went his one chance at happiness. Or so he thought. One fateful evening, as he was leaving the library, he heard a soft voice call his name. He turned to see her standing there, her hair tied back in a loose bun, her eyes filled with an intensity he hadn't seen in months. "Miss Mary?" he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's just Mary now," she said with a sad smile. "I'm not your teacher anymore." They stood in the empty hallway, the weight of the past year hanging heavily between them. "I had to leave," she explained. "It was too much for me, but I couldn't get you out of my head, Tommy. I know it's wrong, and I know it's dangerous, but I feel the same way." Tommy's heart stopped. "What?" "I love you," she said, her voice a mere whisper. "I shouldn't, but I do." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as he stared at her, unable to believe what he was hearing. "You love me?" "I do," she said, stepping closer to him. "But we can't do this here. It's not right. We need to be careful." And so they made a pact. They would keep their love a secret, hidden from the prying eyes of the school and the judgmental whispers of the townsfolk. They would meet in secret, their stolen moments together, a sweet agony that only served to fuel their passion. Their relationship grew in the shadows, a tumultuous dance of desire and fear. They knew it was wrong, that it could ruin both of their lives. But the pull was too strong to resist. They were like moths to a flame, drawn to each other despite the inevitable destruction that awaited them. Their meetings grew more frequent, more intense. They would lose themselves in each other, their bodies entwined in a passionate embrace that spoke louder than words ever could. But with every kiss, every touch, they could feel the noose tightening around their necks. One night, as they lay together in a tangle of limbs and discarded clothing, Mary looked at him with tears in her eyes. "We can't keep doing this," she said. "We're playing with fire, and we're going to get burned." Tommy knew she was right. The fear of discovery had become a constant companion, a dark cloud that threatened to swallow them whole. But the thought of letting her go was more than he could bear. "Then what do we do?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. We end this, she said, her voice trembling, before it's too late. The words hung in the air, a finality that sent a chill down his spine. He knew she was right, but the pain of losing her was unimaginable. They held each other tightly, their hearts breaking in sync. Over the next few weeks, they tried to pull away, to put some much-needed distance between them, but it was a futile effort. The more they tried to resist, the stronger their love grew. They were like two magnets, forever drawn together despite the forces that sought to keep them apart. One evening, unable to stand the agony of separation any longer, they found themselves back in the library. The room was dimly lit, the shadows playing across their faces as they confessed their love once more. "I can't stay away from you," she whispered, her hands shaking as she held his face. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't keep living like this." "Neither can I," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll figure it out. We'll find a way." But fate had other plans. The very next day, a rumor began to spread like wildfire. Someone had seen them together, in a place they shouldn't have been. The whispers grew louder, the glances more accusatory. Mary knew their secret was close to being uncovered. "We have to be careful," she told him. "We can't let this destroy us." But it was too late. The principal called them both into his office, the look on his face grim. Tommy's heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice as he sat there listening to the accusations, the disappointment, the anger. Mary took the fall. She resigned, her career in shambles, her reputation in tatters. Tommy watched as she walked out of the school for the last time, feeling a piece of himself die with every step she took. The town was divided. Some vilified her, calling her a predator, while others whispered that he had led her astray. Tommy knew the truth, but he couldn't bear to speak it. Not when it meant hurting the woman he loved. They didn't see each other for a long time. Tommy threw himself into his studies, graduating with honors, going to college, building a life that was a mere shadow of what he had dreamed. Years later, he would find himself back in the library, the same books lining the shelves, the same smell of old paper in the air. He would think of her, of the love they had shared, the love that had cost them both so much, and he would wonder, not for the first time, if it had all been worth it. If the brief moments of passion and the overwhelming love they had felt was worth the pain that had followed. But in his heart, he knew. For a time, she had been his everything, and that was a memory that no scandal, no amount of time could ever take away. The air in the library was thick with the weight of their shared history as they stared at each other, the silence deafening. Tommy felt his heart pounding in his chest, the words she had spoken echoing in his mind. "Mary," he began, his voice filled with a desperation he couldn't hide. "Please don't leave me like this." Her eyes searched his, a storm of emotion swirling in their emerald depths. "I'm not leaving you," she said finally. "But we have to be smart. We can't let this ruin us." "But how?" he whispered, feeling lost. "We'll find a way," she promised, her voice filled with determination. "We'll be together, just not here. We'll move to a new town, start fresh. We'll have a life where no one knows our past." The hope that surged within him was almost too much to handle. He reached out and took her hand, their fingers interlocking in a silent pact. "I'll do anything," he said, his voice fierce. "I'll go anywhere, as long as I'm with you." Their plan was hastily made, their goodbyes to the town they had grown up in bittersweet. Tommy's heart was heavy as they drove away, but the promise of a future with Mary made every mile feel lighter. They settled into a small town far from the prying eyes of their past. Tommy went to college, and Mary found a job at a local bookstore. They lived in a quiet apartment above a cafe, their lives a secret from everyone around them. Their love grew in the shadows, a clandestine affair that burned brighter with every passing day. They took solace in each other's arms, their whispers of love the only sound in their sanctuary. But the fear of discovery was always with them, a specter that hovered at the edges of their happiness. They knew that one wrong move could shatter the fragile world they had built. And then, one fateful night, it all came crashing down. Tommy had been studying late at the library when he heard a commotion outside. He looked out the window to see a crowd gathering, their eyes fixed on something across the street. His heart racing, he rushed out to find Mary, surrounded by flashing cameras and reporters, her face a mask of shock and horror. Their secret was out. The town erupted in a frenzy of accusations and condemnation. Tommy felt his world crumbling around him as he watched the woman he loved being torn apart by the very people she had given so much to. The trial was a circus, a public spectacle that played out in the harsh glare of the media spotlight. They painted her as a monster, a seductress who had preyed on an innocent student. And through it all, she never once denied her love for him. In the end, she was convicted, her career in ruins, her name forever tainted by scandal. Tommy stood by her side, his own heart shattered. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned to look at him. Her eyes were filled with a love so pure, so strong, that it took his breath away. "It's not your fault," she whispered. "Remember that." The years that followed were a blur of pain and regret. Tommy dropped out of college, his dreams of a bright future replaced by the cold reality of a life tainted by scandal. He moved away, trying to escape the whispers that followed him wherever he went. But he never forgot her. In the quiet moments, when the world was asleep, he would think of her, of the love they had shared, the price they had paid. He would sit in the darkness, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he had been the one to bring her down. Yet, even as the years turned to decades, the fire of their love never truly died.